I want to just say you hear a lot about 30 by 30, and Eastern Sierra Land Trust has really stepped into 30 by 30 here in California. And people say, Kay, why do you spend so much time? Why is it so important? And I'm just gonna, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to not only do large scale conservation, but it is now with the governor's initiative here in California, we're weaving in tribal engagement. We're weaving in underserved communities. We're weaving in justice and equity into land conservation. So it truly is a special, special opportunity. And I hope we can all engage in it as we step forward. I'm going to turn it over to Matt here in just a minute. I want to definitely thank Robert and Eastern Sierra Community Bank for sponsoring tonight. And I want to thank Bob and Adam and Ellen for making the connection with Matt for us tonight. And if it wasn't for them, you know, we wouldn't have gotten to know Matt. So Matt, thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen and Adam and Bob. And now I do want to turn it over to Matt, who is the Chief of Staff for the White House Council on Environmental Quality. Wow, Matt, that's a title, and I'm sure there's a huge job description that follows under that. And we're super excited that you're here with us, and you're going to tell us more about the work you're doing on the national level.
Thank you, Kay. It's really cool to be here, and I caught the last couple minutes of the wine tasting, and I think I obviously joined for the wrong hour here. That seems like the right one to be a part of. And yes, thank you to the gardeners. Really nice to be connected with this group. Been able to admire the work from afar. Haven't spent nearly enough time in the Sierras, but went to school in California and know what a special place it is. I just at the top, a couple things, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're up to on the national level and how it connects with the work that's happening around the country by land trusts. But just a quick word about what the heck the Council on Environmental Quality is, because it's not a household name. So the White House has a set of policy councils, the National Security Council, the Domestic Policy Council, National Economic Council. We are Policy Council was created by Congress to advise the president on environmental issues. We were created in 1969. So we work on a range of hot topics that change some year to year. But for us, the big areas of focus are environmental justice, climate change, of course. We work on climate policy. We tackle a number of thorny environmental problems, toxics, PFAS, et cetera. But big area of focus for us is land and water conservation, and it has been for many years, but in each administration, the focus for the president is different. And so what we do is we help coordinate the Interior Department, the Department of Agriculture, NOAA, all the federal land management agencies, so to ensure that they are driving forward the president's agenda on conservation. It's been a busy 18, 19 months in the administration on environmental policy. For a couple of reasons. First, the previous administration had a somewhat different philosophy about these issues, and probably could say a lot more about that, but I won't. And second, President Biden came in with some very big commitments in the environmental area. Obviously, a lot of attention has been paid to his focus on tackling climate change, building a clean energy economy, and putting us on track to have net zero emissions in our economy by 2050. We put a big focus on environmental justice, launching what's known as the Justice 40 initiative, through which we're trying. I hope we have a connection again.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we were just trying to, fill some space.
Yeah, Adam, good work filling the space. He's always been good at talking. So, hey, I'll try to keep this short. I was just beginning to talk a little bit about some of the commitments the president made on his way into office. And a big one, obviously, around conservation is setting a goal of conserving at least 30% of U.S. lands and waters by 2030. We have never had a conservation goal in this country at a national scale. So this is a big goal. It's a stretch goal. It will require all hands on deck across the country to get there. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the strategies we are seeing as the most effective in getting there, but we try to emphasize that the goal is important, but how we get there is even more important. So it's we want to have a big focus on supporting locally led conservation, make sure we're honoring private property rights, that we're consulting with tribal nations, we're guided by science, and that we are supporting the restoration of natural spaces that have been degraded, and following a set of principles that we think guide good conservation policy generally. But we're 19 months in, and it's the moment in which we're be able to say a little bit more about what we've done, but also where we're going. And I want to highlight just 3 things that I think are really important for driving the work over the next 8 years toward this 30 by 30 goal. The first is investment in resources. We are at a moment where there is thankfully unprecedented investment in conservation across the country, not at the state and local level, but also amazingly, Congress has put resources in over the last few years. And this started even before the Biden administration took office with the passage of the bill that fully funds the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is, as you know, critical to driving a lot of the work that you all do, the Great American Outdoors Act. Secondly, last year, Congress passed the president's proposal around infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which you think about it's built roads and bridges, but it's also immense investment in ecosystem restoration, in forest restoration, in watersheds, and in rivers, et cetera. So that is surprisingly a secret engine for conservation. And third, just a few weeks ago, Congress passed, and the president has now signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is obviously the most significant piece of climate legislation ever passed by Congress and signed by a president. And that has also massive investments in conservation and restoration. About $18 billion going into Farm Bill conservation programs, including into conservation easement programs. And the opportunities are not done. We're hoping that there'll be some wildlife recovery legislation passing soon, a farm bill coming up that will be, we hope, the most conservation forward farm bill ever. So altogether, these investments are creating a big opportunity to accelerate the pace of conservation across the country. Secondly, we think about how we get to this big goal over the next decade. We need policy changes of all kinds at the federal level. So a few things you're seeing us do from the administration are, for the first time ever, beginning to do an inventory of old growth forests and mature forests across the country and think about what steps we can take to conserve those forests. Working with tribes to pursue more tools for co-stewardship of land and to take more land into trust for tribes for conservation purposes, valuing indigenous knowledge and decision-making, boosting and doing everything we possibly can to increase enrollment in private land conservation programs, and then working on some long overdue changes to public land and forest management policies, mining reform, oil and gas reform, et cetera. And then in the ocean, building the first ever sustainable ocean strategy for the United States. So we're beginning to crank on some big policy changes. You'll see more from us over the next 2 years. And the third thing I'll quickly mention is, for us, we have begun the work of working with communities to support place-based initiatives that deserve attention at the national level and that deserve protection. Some of the most visible things done so far by the president are restoring Bears Ears, Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and Northeast Canyons and Seamounts National Monuments. These were monuments that were attempted to be taken off the bat by the previous administration. But there's a huge demand for more public land protections in this country. More people are wanting to get outdoors, so working to expand parks and monuments and create more marine sanctuaries, expand the wildlife refuge system. In California, we last year proposed to expand the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary off the central coast of California. I have another proposal on the East Coast to create a new marine sanctuary. I just created a new conservation area in Montana, working on mineral withdrawals, protecting the boundary waters, protecting the Arctic refuge. So working in the Columbia River Basin to create long-term salmon recovery. So across the country, trying to find locally supported efforts to get toward this 30 by 30 goal and to support well-grounded conservation work. That's a sampling. I think the bottom line is that this administration, we are all in on conservation, but it's really is and must be a team sport. Federal agencies can do their part, but so much of the action is at the state and the local level. California has been an extraordinary partner and really the leader on 30 by 30 and has inspired lots of states and local communities to follow suit and to try to set more ambitious targets for land stewardship. And the land trust community in particular has been at the leading edge of accelerating conservation. The Land Trust Alliance, which I believe you all are a part of, was one of the first organizations nationally to wrap their arms around the 30 by 30 goal and to say, yes, we're going to get there as a country, and land trusts are going to be a big way that we are going to succeed in this. And so when you think about the 21,000 acres you all have protected, that is part of 60 million acres of land that land trusts have protected across the United States. Shockingly, impressively, commendably, the Land Trust Alliance and land trusts across the country have set a goal of conserving an additional 60 million acres of land by 2030. So a doubling of conserved lands and land trusts. That is a stretch goal, but it's necessary given the scale of the biodiversity crisis we're facing, the climate crisis, and the need to expand access to the outdoors. So we're in a moment where we have unprecedented investment in conservation, resources that are available that have never been available before. We have a national goal for the first time ever that is trying to inspire, encourage, drive work forward. And very importantly, the movement behind conservation in this country is bigger and broader and more inclusive than it ever has been before. It's in some of the traditional places, but it's also it's in every state in the United States, but also tribes, organizations, communities, people who are approaching this work from a lot of different perspectives, driving forward toward a common goal. So none of us is alone in this mission, whether it's at the national level or at the local level. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for doing what you're doing. Please keep doing it, keep doing more of it. It's really quite an honor to be here and to just get a small window into the great work you all are doing. So I'll flip it back to you, Kay.